The sound of silence. The Archean battle cruiser Eternal Dawn hung motionless against the backdrop of distant stars, its crystalline hull refracting light in complex patterns. Commander Zixtal stood at the command center, her iridescent scales shifting colors with each movement as she studied the sensor readings before her. "Something is wrong with our equipment," she declared, mandibles clicking in frustration. "Run the diagnostic sequence again." Her crew, each chosen for their exceptional abilities in energy pattern recognition, worked diligently at their stations. The Archeans had dominated this sector of space for millennia precisely because of their mastery of energy detection and manipulation. Their sensors could detect the slightest quantum fluctuation from light years away. But now they were blind. "All systems are functioning at optimal efficiency," Commander reported First Officer Kren. "The anomaly persists." The anomaly was a complete absence of energy signatures in a region of space where their intelligence suggested a human fleet should be. No radiation, no engine emissions, no communication signals. Nothing. It was as if someone had carved a piece of the universe away and left only void. "Perhaps they've developed some form of cloaking technology," suggested Kren, his scales rippling in a pattern that indicated deep thought. Commander Zixtal's facial ridges contracted. "Impossible. Even cloaked vessels emit waste heat. The laws of thermodynamics cannot be violated." She had spent her entire career studying energy patterns. It was the foundation of Archean technological superiority. Every species they had encountered operated within the same fundamental constraints. Until now. The tactical display showed only empty space where the human fleet should be. Their intelligence was solid. 17 human warships had been tracked entering this sector. The reports described them as crude vessels by Archean standards, metallic hulls, chemical propulsion, primitive shield technology. They should have been easy to detect, easy to destroy. New contact. The sensor operator's scales flashed urgent yellow. Multiple signatures. They're just appearing. The tactical display erupted with contacts. Where there had been nothing, now there were ships. Human ships. But they didn't appear at the edge of sensor range or emerge from faster-than-light travel. They simply materialized, as if they had been there all along. "Impossible," Zixtal whispered. "Launch probe drones. Full spectrum analysis." The crystalline drones shot from the Eternal Dawn's launch tubes, their sophisticated sensors probing the space around the human vessels. The data they sent back made no sense. "Commander," Kren's voice was tight with confusion. "The drones report nothing. The ships are there. We can see them visually. But they're registering no energy signatures, no heat, no electromagnetic emissions, no gravitational distortion. According to our instruments, they don't exist." The human ships moved with precise coordination, their formations shifting like schools of fish. They were sleek vessels, their hulls a dull gray that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. No engine glow marked their passage through space. They simply moved. "Hail them," Zixtal ordered. Her training demanded she attempt diplomatic contact before engaging unknown vessels, even if every instinct screamed that these ships were wrong, impossible things that shouldn't exist. The communication officer's scales rippled with frustration. "No response on any frequency, Commander. I can't even detect communication between their ships. It's as if they're not using energy at all." Zixtal finished. "Prepare main batteries. Whatever technology they're using, they can't ignore a concentrated energy blast." The Eternal Dawn's weapon crystals began to hum, gathering power for a devastating attack. Archean weapon technology was unmatched. They could focus enough energy to shatter a small moon. The human ships didn't react. They continued their eerily coordinated dance through space, neither accelerating nor showing any sign they noticed the Archean weapon lock. Fire. Lances of pure energy erupted from the Eternal Dawn's crystals, crossing the void at light speed. They should have torn through the human ship's primitive shields like tissue paper. Instead, the energy beams disappeared. Not blocked, not absorbed. They simply ceased to exist the moment they approached the human vessels. Secondary batteries, fire at will, Zixtal ordered, her scales now pulsing with alarm patterns. This violated everything she knew about physics, about the nature of reality itself. The eternal dawn unleashed its full arsenal. Energy beams of various frequencies, plasma torpedoes, quantum disruptors, all vanished as they neared the human ships. It was like attacking shadows with light. And still the human vessels didn't respond. They maintained their formation, moving with that same fluid grace that seemed to mock the laws of physics. "Commander," Kren's voice was barely a whisper. "Look at the void around their ships." Zixtal focused on the space surrounding the human vessels. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the normal starfield. But then she noticed it. The stars behind the human ships weren't quite right. Their light seemed to bend slightly, creating patterns that hurt her eyes if she looked too long. "They're not using technology as we understand it," she realized. "They're doing something to space itself." As if in response to her revelation, the human ships began to move closer. Their formation shifted, creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to ripple through reality. The space around them began to shimmer like heat waves on a desert planet. "Retreat," Zixtal ordered. For the first time in her career, she felt true fear. Not of the human ships themselves, but of what they represented. A fundamental challenge to everything the Arxians thought they knew about the universe. As the eternal dawn engaged its drive crystals, Zixtal watched the human ships fade from view. Not quickly, like vessels engaging stealth systems, but gradually, like a morning mist evaporating in sunlight. Soon the sensors showed empty space again, but she knew they were still there, moving through space in ways that should not be possible. The Arxian Empire had ruled the stars through their mastery of energy and matter. But these humans, they had found something else. Something deeper. Something that made all of Arxian science look like a child's toys. "Send word to High Command," she ordered as they retreated. "The humans, they're not like anything we've seen before. They're not using our laws of physics. They found different ones." As the eternal dawn fled, its crew shaken to their core, the human ships continued their silent dance through the void. Their presence felt but unseen, their technology not a violation of natural law, but a deeper expression of it. The war that would follow would not be fought with energy weapons and shield generators. It would be fought with reality itself as the battlefield, and humanity had already mastered the rules of engagement. The unexpected defense. The Arxian High Command's crystalline chamber pulsed with agitation as Admiral Vexnor presented the invasion plans. 300 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled, gathered at the edge of human space. The chamber's walls reflected the emotional state of its occupants, shifting between deep purples of concern and angry reds of wounded pride. Commander Zixtal's encounter was concerning. Vexnor admitted, his scales showing controlled patterns of confidence. But one ship's anomalous readings cannot deter us. The humans occupy valuable systems, and their defiance cannot go unchallenged. The tactical display showed the human colony world of New Terra, a bustling outpost with minimal orbital defenses. According to their intelligence, it housed just 5 of the mysterious human vessels that had unnerved Commander Zixtal. "We will overwhelm them with numbers," Vexnor continued. "No technology, no matter how advanced, can withstand the combined firepower of 300 capital ships." The High Command gave their approval, though their scales betrayed their unease. The Arxians had never failed to subjugate a species once they committed to full-scale invasion. Their mastery of energy manipulation made their weapons virtually unstoppable. The invasion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls forming a vast geometric pattern designed to channel and amplify their combined firepower. New Terra hung before them, a blue-green jewel surrounded by orbital infrastructure. The 5 human ships were there, maintaining their usual position above the colony. They made no move to flee or to call for reinforcements. Their gray hulls seemed to absorb the light from the system's star, making them look like holes in space. "All ships, commence firing," Admiral Vexnor commanded. "Maximum power to all weapon systems." The space between the fleets erupted with energy as 300 ships unleashed their arsenals simultaneously. The combined firepower could have cracked a planet. The human vessels should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beams, rather than disappearing as they had during Zixel's encounter, began to curve. Like rivers of light, they flowed around the human ships in complex patterns, weaving together into an intricate web of power. The human vessels seemed to conduct a silent symphony, directing the energy with subtle movements. Ships began to break apart, their crews evacuating in emergency pods as their once mighty vessels crumbled into glittering shards. The humans hadn't just redirected the attack, they had transformed it, using the Arxians' own energy against them with devastating efficiency. "Cease fire," Vexnor ordered, but it was too late. The web of energy had taken on a life of its own, feeding back into each Arxian ship that continued to fire, causing their weapon crystals to overload and explode. Within minutes, half the invasion fleet was reduced to drifting debris. The remaining ships, their weapon systems fused and useless, could only watch as the 5 human vessels resumed their patrol pattern, still silent, still impossible to detect on sensors. As emergency pods were recovered and casualties counted, Vexnor received a transmission from High Command. Their message was simple: retreat. Full withdrawal from human space. The Admiral stared at the human ships through his command viewport, his scales shifting through patterns of fear, awe, and revelation. The humans hadn't just developed better technology, they had fundamental understanding of the universe that made Arxian science look primitive. A junior officer approached, her scales showing patterns of curiosity mingled with terror. "Admiral," she said, "I've been analyzing the energy patterns they created. They didn't just redirect our attacks. They changed the fundamental properties of the energy itself. It's as if they can rewrite the basic laws of physics in their vicinity." Vexnor nodded slowly. "We have been arrogant," he said. "We thought mastery of energy was the pinnacle of scientific achievement. But these humans, they don't see energy as something to be controlled. They see it as something to be conducted, like music through space itself." As the surviving ships limped away from New Terra, Vexnor couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. The Arxians had prided themselves on understanding the universe's symphony, but humans, it seemed, had learned to be its composers. Patterns in the void. Dr. Miraval moved through the crystalline corridors of the Science Ministry, her scales rippling with barely contained excitement. After months of studying the recordings from both Commander Zixel's encounter and Admiral Vexnor's disastrous invasion attempt, she had found something that would either make her career or mark her as insane. The council chamber sparkled with the combined bioluminescence of the most brilliant scientific minds in the Arxian Empire. Their scales shifted in subtle patterns of skepticism as Miraval took her place at the center of the room. "Distinguished colleagues," she began, activating the holographic display. "What you're about to see will challenge everything we believe about the nature of reality." The display showed the space around a human ship during the New Terra battle. To normalize, it appeared empty, but Miraval had developed new sensing algorithms designed to detect patterns too subtle for standard instruments. "Watch what happens when I apply a quantum resonance filter," she said, adjusting the display. The seemingly empty space erupted with complex geometric patterns, flowing outward from the human vessel like ripples in a pond. "These patterns," she continued, her scales pulsing with academic fervor, "appear in everything the humans do. Their ships don't generate energy signatures because they're not using energy in any way we understand. They're manipulating the quantum foam of space itself." The chamber erupted with dismissive color patterns. "Impossible," declared Chief Scientist Renfell. "The quantum foam exists only at the Planck scale. No technology could possibly. With respect, Miraval interrupted, "We're not dealing with technology as we understand it. Look at this." She overlaid multiple recordings, showing how the patterns repeated across different encounters. The humans aren't building machines. They're creating instruments that play the fundamental strings of the universe. The display shifted to show the energy web from the New Terra battle. When our fleet attacked, the humans didn't just redirect the energy. They used our weapons' output to create a standing wave in space-time itself. They turned our own understanding of physics against us. She highlighted specific points in the pattern. These nodes match exactly with theoretical predictions of quantum gravity resonance. The humans have somehow learned to detect and manipulate these resonances. Their ships aren't flying through space. They're surfing on waves of probability. The chamber was silent now, scales shifting between patterns of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Miraval pressed her advantage. Patterns in the void. Dr. Miraval moved through the crystalline corridors of the science ministry, her scales rippling with barely contained excitement. After months of studying the recordings from both Commander Zixel's encounter and Admiral Vexner's disastrous invasion attempt, she had found something. Something that would either make her career or mark her as insane. The council chamber sparkled with the combined bioluminescence of the most brilliant scientific minds in the Arxian Empire. Their scales shifted in subtle patterns of skepticism as Miraval took her place at the center of the room. "Distinguished colleagues," she began, activating the holographic display. "What you're about to see will challenge everything we believe about the nature of reality." The display showed the space around a human ship during the New Terra battle. To normalize, it appeared empty. But Miraval had developed new sensing algorithms, designed to detect patterns too subtle for standard instruments. "Watch what happens when I apply a quantum resonance filter," she said, adjusting the display. The seemingly empty space erupted with complex geometric patterns, flowing outward from the human vessel like ripples in a pond. "These patterns," she continued, her scales pulsing with academic fervor, "appear in everything the humans do. Their ships don't generate energy signatures because they're not using energy in any way we understand. They're manipulating the quantum foam of space itself." The chamber erupted with dismissive color patterns. "Impossible," declared Chief Scientist Renthal. "The quantum foam exists only at the Planck scale. No technology could possibly." With respect, Miraval interrupted, "We're not dealing with technology as we understand it. Look at this." She overlaid multiple recordings, showing how the patterns repeated across different encounters. The humans aren't building machines. They're creating instruments that play the fundamental strings of the universe. The display shifted to show the energy web from the New Terra battle. When our fleet attacked, the humans didn't just redirect the energy. They used our weapons' output to create a standing wave in space-time itself. They turned our own understanding of physics against us. She highlighted specific points in the pattern. These nodes match exactly with theoretical predictions of quantum gravity resonance. The humans have somehow learned to detect and manipulate these resonances. Their ships aren't flying through space. They're surfing on waves of probability. The chamber was silent now, scales shifting between patterns of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Miraval pressed her advantage. "I've analyzed hundreds of recordings. The patterns are always there, just below our ability to detect them. The humans aren't violating the laws of physics. They're operating on a deeper level of reality than we ever knew existed." She brought up a new simulation. "Their ships move in perfect synchronization because they're all responding to the same underlying rhythm of space-time. It's like they've learned to hear the music of the universe itself." "And what of their ability to appear and disappear at will?" asked a junior researcher, scales showing genuine curiosity. "They're not disappearing," Miraval explained. "They're shifting slightly out of phase with our reality by manipulating quantum probability states. Imagine a soap bubble reflecting light. Tilt it slightly, and it seems to vanish, but it's still there. The humans have learned to tilt their ships in relation to space-time itself." Chief Scientist Renthal's scales had settled into a pattern of deep thought. If what you're saying is true, Dr. Miraval, then our entire approach to physics is fundamentally limited, she finished. We've been so focused on manipulating energy that we never considered manipulating the fabric of space itself. The humans somehow made this leap, and now they're centuries ahead of us in understanding how reality actually works. The implications were staggering. Every piece of Arxian technology was based on energy manipulation. Their ships, their weapons, their entire civilization. But the humans had found a way to bypass energy entirely, working directly with the quantum structure of the universe. There's more, Miraval said, her scales now showing patterns of concern. These quantum resonance patterns, they're spreading. Every time the humans use their ships, they leave behind subtle changes in the fabric of space. They're not just using this technology. They're reshaping the galaxy to make it more conducive to their way of doing things. The chamber erupted in patterns of alarm. Are you suggesting, Renthal asked, that the humans are actually changing the fundamental constants of the universe? Not changing, Miraval corrected. Conducting. Like a symphony orchestra, they're tuning the local quantum fields to resonate with their technology. And the more they do it, the easier it becomes for them. They're not just masters of this new physics, they're teaching the universe itself to sing their song. As her words sank in, the chamber's crystalline walls began to pulse with patterns of fear. The Arxians had thought themselves the pinnacle of scientific achievement, but now they faced a species that had transcended conventional physics entirely. We must adapt, Miraval concluded, her scales showing determination. The humans aren't our enemies. They're our teachers. They've shown us that everything we know about the universe is just the surface of a much deeper reality. We can either learn from them, or we can watch as they remake the galaxy in their own image. One quantum resonance at a time. The symphony revealed. The distress call reached both Arxian High Command and Earth Fleet Headquarters simultaneously. The Nexar, a species of peaceful researchers, were under attack from an unknown aggressor. Their homeworld's orbital stations were being systematically destroyed, and their limited defensive capabilities were failing. High Admiral Vexnor, recently promoted despite the New Terra defeat, watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Nexar system was only 2 light-years from Arxian space. If their mysterious attackers gained a foothold there, it could threaten Arxian security. Launch the response fleet, he ordered, his scales showing patterns of grim determination. Even after their recent losses, the Arxians couldn't ignore a threat so close to their territory. But as the Arxian fleet prepared to jump, another message came through. The humans were already responding. The tactical display lit up with signatures that shouldn't exist, dozens of human vessels appearing in the Nexar system. But something was different this time. Instead of being invisible to sensors, the human ships were deliberately making themselves seen, broadcasting their presence across all frequencies. They want us to watch, Dr. Miraval said softly. She had been assigned to the Admiral's staff after her breakthrough research. They're going to show us something. The human ships moved into position around the Nexar homeworld, but not in any conventional defense formation. They arranged themselves in a vast, 3-dimensional geometric pattern that seemed to pulse with invisible energy. Look at the quantum resonance patterns, Miraval breathed, her instruments recording everything. They're building something massive. The attackers, now identified as the Kresh, a notorious species of raiders, pressed their assault. Their energy weapons lashed out at the human formation, but instead of disappearing or being redirected, the energy was caught and woven into the growing pattern. It's a quantum resonance cascade, Miraval explained, her scales flickering with academic excitement. They're using the attack itself to power something much bigger. The pattern expanded, encompassing the entire Nexar system. Where human ships formed the vertices of their geometric web, space itself seemed to ripple and fold. The Kresh vessels suddenly found themselves unable to maintain formation, their carefully planned attack disrupted by subtle changes in local space-time. They're not just defending the system, Miraval realized. They're changing its fundamental properties, making it inhospitable to hostile intent. The effect was beautiful and terrifying to watch. Kresh weapons fire curved away from intended targets. Their engines struggled against invisible currents in space, and their communications dissolved into quantum static. But the Nexer ships and stations remained untouched, protected by the same forces that confounded their attackers. Within hours, the Kresh fleet retreated in disarray, their notorious fighting spirit broken by forces they couldn't understand or resist. But the human ships weren't finished. The geometric patterns shifted, and waves of quantum resonance washed through the system. Damaged Nexer stations began to repair themselves as local spacetime was adjusted to prefer their original configuration. Debris gathered itself into orderly clusters, ready for recycling. They're not just fighting, Vexnor said, his scales showing patterns of awe. They're healing. The human ships began to pulse in unison, and suddenly the Arxian observers felt something they had never experienced before, a direct sensitivity to the quantum resonance field. For just a moment, they could feel what the humans felt, the deep rhythms of spacetime, the cosmic dance of probability and possibility. This is how they perceive reality, Miraval whispered. They're showing us their world. The sensation faded, but its impact remained. The Arxian observers had glimpsed a deeper layer of reality, one where the distinction between matter and energy, space and time, broke down into pure patterns of resonance. The human fleet commander finally transmitted a message, the first direct communication they had ever initiated with the Arxians. This is how we see the universe. This is what we protect. You are welcome to learn, if you are willing to listen. As the human ships began to fade from normal space, maintaining their protective resonance pattern around the Nexer system, Vexnor turned to Miraval. How long, he asked, would it take us to learn to hear what they hear? Miraval's scales shifted to a pattern of quiet optimism. That depends, she replied, on whether we're ready to admit that everything we know about physics is just the first note of a much longer song. A new understanding. The grand auditorium of the Galactic Science Academy was filled to capacity. Representatives from 100 species gathered to witness something unprecedented. The first public demonstration of human quantum resonance technology. After the defense of the Nexer system, humanity had extended an open invitation to all spacefaring races to learn their methods. Dr. Miraval sat in the front row beside Admiral Vexnor, their scales shifting between patterns of anticipation and nervous energy. The stage held no complex machinery, no massive energy projectors, only a simple platform where 5 humans stood in a circle, surrounded by what looked like ordinary musical instruments. Welcome, the lead human scientist began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. What you're about to witness is not a technology demonstration in the conventional sense. It's an invitation to hear the music that has always been playing around us. The humans lifted their instruments, a violin, a cello, a flute, a drum, and what appeared to be an ordinary singing bowl. But when they began to play, the audience realized these were no ordinary instruments at all. The first note from the violin sent ripples through local spacetime that everyone could feel. The cello's deep tones seemed to resonate with the quantum foam itself. When the flute joined in, probability waves became visible as shimmering patterns in the air. We discovered it by accident, the scientist explained as her colleagues continued playing. Our first quantum researchers noticed that certain music seemed to affect their results. At first, we thought it was merely vibration interfering with sensitive equipment. But then we realized the music wasn't interfering with our measurements. It was interfering with reality itself. The drummer began a complex rhythm, and suddenly the visible patterns organized themselves into geometric structures that rotated and flowed through the auditorium. The singing bowl's pure tone caused these structures to pulse with possibilities. The universe, she continued, isn't built on mathematical equations or energy fields. Those are just our limited ways of describing something far more fundamental. The universe is built on resonance, on harmony and rhythm, on patterns that repeat across all scales of existence. As if to demonstrate, the musicians shifted their melody, and reality shifted with it. Members of the audience gasped as they felt themselves become slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, the same effect that made human ships impossible to detect. Our ships don't use engines in the conventional sense. They're instruments, played by their crews in harmony with the cosmic symphony. We don't fight with weapons. We change the local resonance patterns to make conflict impossible. We don't colonize planets. We help them find their own songs in the universal chorus. The music swelled, and suddenly every being in the auditorium could sense it. The deep rhythms of spacetime, the harmonies of interacting quantum fields, the melodies of probability and causation. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and somehow deeply familiar, as if they were hearing something they'd always known but never recognized. "This is why we came into space," the scientists said softly as the music continued to reveal the hidden nature of reality. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to learn the universe's song and add our own harmonies to it. And now we invite you to join us. The musicians began teaching simple patterns to the audience, ways of moving, of breathing, of focusing thought that helped them sense the quantum resonances. Species that had been at war for generations found themselves swaying to the same rhythms. Ancient enemies discovered they could create beautiful harmonies together.